All right. Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday at 8 p.m. So we have the Good News Game Plan with Coach Joe Kelly. We are both on location. As we know, Greenwich is on vacation this week. So how you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you? Now, where are you? You're upstate again in that Judge family compound, aren't you?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Very
good.
secret location up here north.
Well, I'm here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where it's 82 degrees. I thought the shot, being a non-professional in this stuff, I thought the shot of the skyline of Fort Lauderdale behind me with the palm trees would actually show up. But the second I turned the lamp on, all you do is see my face. So things happen, but it's good news. It's vacation week for everyone back in Greenwich. All the kids are off for school and doing what they do. We're cruising through this pandemic. We're getting shots. I'm hearing shots getting into everybody's arm. So it's all good stuff going on as far as I'm concerned. Now, Tim, give me some good news from you. You know you always have some great news. So give us some good news.
I have some very interesting news, and amazingly, what happened just after the show last week. I'm going to have to shout out some really great news about the fire department and the police department, because seconds after we ended our show last week, my son calls me, and he turned his car over on John Street in Greenwich, coming home from work.
Good news.
No, it is, because he climbed right out.
Perfect.
And I went and picked him up. The car didn't make it, but and everything's fine. But it was extremely snowy last Tuesday night, and he was coming home from working at the store and slid into the snowbank and tipped it over. But the cops were on the scene, the fire department was on the scene, everything got taken away and cleared up, and I brought my boy home. So
that's good.
That's the best news I could ever give you.
That is all the good news. Kudos to our great Greenwich Fire Department. Kudos to our Greenwich Police Department. And lucky, Tim, lucky that your son is okay. So that's all good news on that front. Now, you have insurance, right, Tim? So you're covered under insurance. You get a new car.
Oh, yeah.
Good news, too. So we have lots of good news coming out of that. Now, a little bit more good news. Do we have a special guest this evening?
Oh, very special. Let's bring him right up. Gary. I don't know who knows Gary around town, but this is Gary.
Hello, Gary.
I guess I'm the only one who stayed in town during this theoretical vacation. I don't have kids in high school anymore.
That's very popular.
There are no more vacations when you don't have kids in high school.
Well, the staycation is what Tim referred to it as. It looks like a staycation. Well, that's right. You don't have February break. And we have one of our children and our foster son also in Greenwich High School now. So we have our daughter Caitlin there. So we have a couple of kids enjoying February break. So we're having fun trying to get a little. We're visiting some friends. Gary, some Burkholts. You know the Burkholts, they're friends of yours. Thomas and Sandra, they're here as well. They're in our studio audience. Let's hear from our studio audience here in Fort Lauderdale. So we have a studio audience here. And we have the Markowitzes here as well. Gary, you know.
I love the Markowitzes.
Yes, they're sitting here. Mary Ellen and Brad are both sitting here. They are preparing. Well, they'll say hi themselves because they're going to prepare some good news information for us, some good news questions. But Gary, what I like to talk about when people talk about you and your Greenwich activity and involvement is I say I met Gary some years ago just as a sideline dad. I meet so many people, and most better friends are sideline dads and sideline moms I met over the years in games. And you had a unique predicament because you have some fame, a lot of fame you have from the program, television and radio program that you're involved in. But I was so impressed by the way you handled your celebrity and the way that you acted so normally when kids would come up at times and make an issue of something, and you handled it so well. Sometimes as the coach at the high school and then some authority over the kids, I turn to those kids and I say, hey, treat him with respect. You're like, Joe, don't worry, it's fine, it's okay. But your temperament with that was so great. Now, I was always so impressed when we spent time together and did that. So tell us about how it was like being our Greenwich celebrity and being a sideline dad and being involved in town in that way.
Well, I got to start by telling you that the year that you and I hung out was the first year that my oldest son played any kind of organized sport. So it was with the Coscop Crushers, which was a very interesting thing for my son because we live in the North Mianus area. The team was full at that point. So if he wanted to get into the league, the only team he could play with was the Crushers, which was kind of tough for him because, he would wear his Crushers shirt to North Mianus school and his friends were pretty cool about it. But I had such a great time on the sideline that year because, I would get off for work early enough to be able to go to all the practices. And there was a group of dads there that were like a lot of fun to hang out with. And, we're the typical dads. We could do this, we could do that. How come the town doesn't do this? How come the town doesn't do that? So I think even then we were both kind of sowing the seeds for what we were going to do down the line to try to help make this town better.
Well, you are absolutely correct in that, because that it's exactly, we had those conversations. Things could be better. I did some coaching and got involved in that program. I got brought in. I coached every sport in town. As you even mentioned, the Crushers. I was not much of a football player. I put 1 or 2 seasons in as a kid, but sure, when they needed somebody, I put my hand up and worked there. But to a better challenge, which we both have in common, we stepped up to a greater calling within the town. Now, you have served on the Parks and Rec now for, you told me, I think 11 years.
Yeah, I think it's 11 years now. I think I got in, and maybe I got in 2011, so it's about 10 years now. But I just want to go back for a second, Joe, because it started with just hanging out on the sidelines, and then and then I remember like that year, I think one of the coaches couldn't be there, said, "Hey, can you give me a hand on the sidelines of the game?" And I did. And one of the things for me is I was going to all the games and all the practices anyway, because I got off early enough to do that. And I thought, like, listen, I'm not the greatest coach in the world, but I would always joke around, I'm a slam dunk to start practice at 4:00. So that, believe it or not, that's very helpful. So I ended up coaching GYFL for 8 years because I ran both my kids through the program. I ended up coaching OGRCC and then Cal Ripken for about 10 years, ran both my kids through the program. And even when my son played GBA, I can't sit still. So I would either volunteer to keep score or keep the clock, because for me, it was the best seat in the house. And I love, I really felt really lucky and a lot of gratitude that I had the ability to be at all my kids' games. Because when I was growing up, my dad worked really hard and I was on the wrestling team, a football team, and he couldn't come to a lot of games. So for me, it was a lot of fun.
I've seen you on a number of chain gangs too. You didn't mention that. I think you've represented those lollipops on the side of the football games, I think too. So yes, no, it's
again, always, best seat it's the best seat in the house. Like, who wouldn't want to do the change? You get to see everything. You get to hear all the coaches. You get to hear all the stuff that they're yelling. It's fun.
Well, there is a slightly better seat, Gary. I do have to correct you on this. My 2 daughters were big enthusiastic soccer players years ago. So I went as a daddy-daughter thing. I went and trained to be a certified soccer referee. So to even be a better seat, I became a soccer referee and also a rugby referee. So any chance to referee a youth sport or a game, I would just get out there and love, in addition to the coaching. So your seats you described were good seats, but I think the referee seat is the best seat in the stadium. That's for sure.
I got drafted to umpire a playoff baseball game, and I was petrified because I don't really like to umpire. And that was back in the days where you stood behind the pitcher. It was that age group. And I called my son out on strikes, and he glared at me. He was not happy.
No, that's always tough. Well, coaching your son, refereeing, umpiring your son, anytime you're dealing with your kids, there's a mix of, are you dad? Are you coach? And that's something that if you successfully coach and navigate through, your kids not look back at you and say, that's great. I'm happy you did that. That's great. I'll tell you a little brief story about it. But when I got the opportunity, when the Greenwich High School interviewed me and asked me to be the head rugby coach at the school, my son was a sophomore in the program at that point. And as you know, I've coached him in basketball. I've coached him in soccer and in football. I've coached him in a ton of things. He said to me, I said to him, I said, Joe Jr., I said, they've offered me the opportunity to be the head coach at the high school. Is that okay with you? Because I know all the friends and stuff. He said, Dad, it's high school. It's a little bit different. I'm not sure it's okay. So I said, okay, we'll talk about it tomorrow night at dinner. So tomorrow night at dinner, we sat down. I said, Joe, did you think about it a little bit? What do you think now? He said, well, I'm still not sure. I said, what if I give you $100? He said, done. So that started my rugby coaching career at the high school, which was a great 9 years, all those state championships and all those great kids. It was tons of fun.
That's great stuff. It's interesting that you say that, because I'm on the board of an AIDS charity, which I was president of for 12 years, but I've been on the board of the charity for 20 years. I lost my brother in 1991, and December 1st every year is World AIDS Day. So the high school asked me to come and speak, which I've done twice. But when my older son was there, I was like, would you be cool if I came? And he's like, my son just didn't want to be noticed. So he's like, Dad, I'd rather you didn't come. And my younger son's like, yeah, come on. And so I did get a chance to speak at the high school twice.
which is always good. Your kids are great. And the way I mean, it's unique for them to have a celebrity father like yourself, and for them to have to be themselves and be in the high school in their own skin, yet have a father that everybody knows and sees in a celebrity manner. So that's also a tribute to your kids, your sons. They're always great to see.
It's a tribute to my wife that my kids are so well adjusted. Let's not kid ourselves.
Well, Jill's right here in the audience too, so we all know that she's the one who taught my kids to behave properly. So that's certainly a plus. Let me just jump in a second, because what I told the audience here at Fort Lauderdale, that they'd be able to give bits of good news for us, Greenwich good news. Do we have any Greenwich good news from the Fort Lauderdale audience? Give me some Greenwich good news.
The real estate market is on fire.
The real estate market is on fire in Greenwich, says Jill, the real estate broker. So that's good news. That's fantastic. Mary Ellen Markowitz, do you have a bit of good news, Greenwich good news, that we can share and talk about?
I read in today's Greenwich Times.
Come on up, Mary Ellen. We don't hear you now. We'll have Jill up to it in a second. Come on camera. Yeah, you're friends with Gary. Mary Ellen's going to get on camera.
So, hi, Jerry.
How are you?
I just want to say that Greenwich Time, I read today that our social service department is doing a great job with people who are experiencing, they can't meet their rent. And so we're stepping up and we're helping we're helping people who need rental, help. And I'm really proud of our town for doing that. And let's keep up the good work.
Well, that's great. And that's going to segue right into what Gary does with the town, because we have that in common. Thank you, Mary Ellen. That's great. But Gary, the work you do, and this is one thing you and I could share tremendously. I've done a lot of private projects on my own and various investments, but never a public project. And you are doing. I'm working on the Cardinal Stadium project now. I'm spearheading that venture, and you're spearheading the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center as well. So tell me, how's that project, and how long? We'll start with how long have you been working on that now?
Well, let me start by saying that my kids used to go to the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center all the time, and I loved it. They roller skated there, and they played basketball there, and all that stuff. So it's been in disrepair ever since I can remember. It used to be charming, and now it's just falling down. And I don't know if you know, but the whole structure was a gift from Electrolux. They were here in town as a business. That was a recreation center for their people, and they gifted it and the land to the town. So, I mean, it's state of the art, 1950. That's when it was built.
It looks like
so when I got on board of Parks and Rec, that was one of my priorities. I said, that's going to be my pet project. I never imagined it would take 10 years to really get this project going. And it's had a lot of stops and starts. There were a great group of people who had a vision for it in 2007. Then the market crashed, and then Chelsea Piers came in, and they built it, and they took away a lot of what we might have built there or what we might have needed. So it's gone through a lot of stuff, but I'm first of all, I'm the co-chair of Parks and Rec with a guy named Scott Johnson, who's amazing. And he and I are also the co-chairs of the Eastern Greenwich Civic Center Committee. So, listen, it's a lot of work because, the lesson we learned, and I'm sure you've learned this more recently, is you better be really prepared, because you better know what the community wants, because when it comes time to go in front of all these boards, people are going to come out and kind of let you know that that's not what they want. We were lucky enough. We went to, we held a ridiculous amount of public meetings, and then a lot of us on the subcommittee, we went and visited all the local RTMs, 11, 12, 6, all of them, all the ones that are in that area. And so when it came time to really get this, passed for approval, we had really talked to everybody in the town. We had sent out a survey. What do you want in there? And that turns into a whole thing too, because, if I send you a survey, Joe, and I said, would you like a pool and would you like a skating rink? What would your answer be?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now, if I said, would you like a pool and a skating rink, except you're not going to get all this other stuff and it's going to raise your taxes a lot, what would you say?
That's a very different survey, isn't it?
Exactly. So, there, and I have to be very honest with you. When I didn't know how things worked and I was an outsider, I used to say this thing, the line I hear all the time: let's build it once and build it big. But, you can't always build it big. First of all, everybody doesn't want big. And one of the things that you're dealing with at the Civic Center is some people think the Civic Center is a community center. Okay, that's what the CC stands for. community center or civic center. Some people think it's a sports center, and there are people who are not into sports, and there are people who are very into sports, and that's where the disparity happens. So we think we did a really great job of balance. It's going to be not only have a full basketball court in there, but there's another big part of it that's a sports court, but also can be used for high level functions. And then we have all these other rooms. When we first did our meeting, these people would come, and I found all these groups that I didn't know existed, like the Wednesday afternoon ladies painting club. And I didn't know they existed. And and I remember this woman, she's a little bit older. She came to the podium and she said, "Is there going to be a slop sink?" And we're like, "Do you need one?" And she's like, "Yeah, then there'll be one." You know what I mean? But you have to serve a lot of masters, is what I'm saying. And so the good news is we got an architect, we got the plans approved, we got through planning and zoning, and we have a couple more boards to go through. But if we're lucky, we can start building maybe around this time next year. And then when it's done, my grandkids can play there.
Exactly. Well, yeah, but to your point, the interesting thing about a public project is it's everybody's project. So everyone wants to have a say in the matter, as comparing it to a private project where, like right now, I'm buying a piece of land up in Stonington. I have a piece of land which we're selling off parcels and building buildings, building homes up in Groton. And that's my project. I own it. I run it. I'm president of the company. Everything gets done in a timely manner. When I want it done, it gets done. With a public project, everyone has a say, and I accept that that's the case. And that's what we went through. The number of times we had to have public presentations, the number of times we had to talk about different structures and plans, the number of people who got together, including all the various groups that you made reference to, had a say in the matter, and they deserve to have a say in the matter because it's everyone's project. So thank you for all the tolerance of people's opinions, thoughts, ideas, concepts, and bringing them into something that's moving forward, because the hard part is moving it forward, because you're taking the risk that something might go wrong and you've got to wear the responsibility because you're the one who's ushering the thing forward for the community. So thank you for doing that. I certainly do appreciate that.
I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do too. And I'm sure that even when it's open and people are going to see how beautiful it is, there's still going to be people who are going to walk in and go, "Where's the skating rink? Where's the pool?" But that's what we can. We're also under the constraints of, it's not my money, it's the town's money. And there are some people in the town who are very fiscally conservative. And there's some people in the town who are like, "Hey, now's the time because interest rates are low. Now's the time to borrow and spend." So, there's a lot going on, but I'm very excited. I mean, our Parks and Rec in general, the pool got done. The Junior League was instrumental in that. What you guys are doing at the high school, even though it's really more a Board of Ed thing, Parks and Rec has a little bit to do with that. That's going to be amazing. I saw the plans on that. And man, I mean, I've been like, I spent so much time in those stands with you. And, it's kind of was, I don't want to use the word embarrassing, but when you go to other towns and you see they have a field house, and then you go to Greenwich and, your 87-year-old mother goes, "I got to go to the bathroom." And you're like, "All right, Mom, hold my arm while I walk you down to that porta potty 100 yards away." It's a little embarrassing, and that's going to change.
Well, Jill, come up and talk about the bathrooms. You're a big advocate of getting the bathrooms in the high school. You thought that was very important. We put it out as a high priority because when I asked my wife, Jill, what is the most important thing of the stadium? What should we do? Bleachers, press box, all that sort of stuff. Her response was what?
Well, the porta potties were not fun. Training a 2-year-old on how to use a bathroom, and I just didn't want her going at all. I used to go around with a little porta potty in the back of my car so she didn't have to use those. It was so disgusting. So, and then just the grandparents having to walk from so far away to get to watch their grandkids play and climb up into the stadium. It was terrible. My dad, came to almost every one of my son's games, and it was tough. It was tough. And I used to try and sneak in back of the bleachers and use my pull somehow to get him in there. But it was crazy.
No, we're going to change that once a community member.
Embarrassing is a word to use.
Voicing her opinion, and then we have to make sure it all gets done.
And also don't forget, listen, it's probably 90% sports, but it's also where you do the high school graduation. And once you make the stadium good, you will draw in other things like band competitions. And so it really is for the whole town. And absolutely. I always say, like, I think when Peter Tessie was first selectman, he said something like 53% of people in town play some version of sports. And Jill can attest to this. when somebody comes into town, a young couple, and they're looking to buy real estate, they don't know if their kid's going to be the next Steve Young, but in their mind, it might be. And so, yeah, of course, you're going to look like, hey, what do the parks look like? And what does the high school field look like? What does the high school look like in general? And so, I think it's going to be great, the project that you're working on. I'm very excited about it.
I just want to say one more thing because people say that, the stadium is not important because it's not education, but there's a lot of life lessons that are learned on that field. Yes. These coaches that they have, they're learning lessons that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. So that argument is nixed with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard.
The studio audience is clapping to that one. Yes.
It's hard. Listen, if 53% of people are playing sports, that means you're serving at least half the town. And when you're serving half the town, that's a big number. Because even with the beaches and the parks, not everybody gets to go. But yes, it's important. You just got the thing on Parks and Rec that I found is, it's kind of tit for tat. Like if you're gonna do the Civic Center, you're gonna do something sports wise, you got to make sure you take care of other things as well, which are important, like open spaces. Like we just finished an amazing project. Nancy Chapin finished this beautiful project where basically they redid Binney Park. We dredged it, cleaned it up, and it's beautiful now. And you can tell because during the pandemic, on a nice day, Binney Park is a lot more crowded than it used to be.
Absolutely. It certainly paid off. Now, Gary, tell me a little about you moving to Greenwich. What made you choose Greenwich? Why is it the town that you now call, well, your hometown? It's certainly your kid's hometown. It's your hometown, and you certainly contribute, as we just talked about in our interview right now, you've contributed lots of your life and time to that. So tell us what brought you to Greenwich and how long ago you came here, and what are other things that you're involved in at Greenwich?
I mean, I got here 25 years ago, and I never in a million years imagined I would ever live here. When I was growing up on Long Island, I grew up in Uniondale, walking distance to the Nassau Coliseum. Connecticut was a far, far away place. I never had any reason to go to Connecticut as a kid because we didn't know anybody here. And so I was living in the city with my wife. And about a year before we moved up here, we started looking. So we started in Larchmont. The only reason I went to Larchmont was my dentist was in Larchmont. I used to borrow my roommate's car, drive to Larchmont. And I go, this town looks great. So my wife and I hop in the car and we start looking. We're like, whoa, those are some big prices in Larchmont. So we started to make our way up and we got to Rye Brook. And then we went all the way up the line. We did Irvington, Tarrytown, all the way up to Chappaqua, where we almost bought a place. And then we made our way back down to Rye, and the realtor there said, you should go look at Greenwich. And what I'd heard about Greenwich was this is a place where everyone's super rich. Nobody else can imagine that they could live there. And I kept saying, we can't afford to live there. It's like, yes, you can. It's not what you think. And so I always think this town gets a really bad rap. You know what I mean? I think it gets a bad rap about not being inclusive enough and having like kind of a snotty reputation. And I won't name names, but I think there's some other towns a little farther up the line that deserve the rap more than Greenwich does. Yeah. And so we looked between Greenwich and Darien for 6 months, bounced back and forth. But, we could always afford a house in Darien, and then we would go, but our hearts were in Greenwich. So finally we found a house that we were able to afford. We moved in, and I have never looked back. I really have an amazing love of this town, more than the town I grew up in, because I'm much more invested in this town than the town I grew up in. I went to school there, but my dad worked, and he wasn't really involved in local stuff. I feel like not only myself, but a lot of people I know and love are involved in the town locally. So yeah, 25 years here, my third house, my last house in Greenwich, but maybe not, maybe one more.
Well, Gary, it's people like you that I really appreciate Greenwich. And as you said, it's not what people say it is who don't or are not from Greenwich. It's an eclectic mix, and that's why we're big supporters of the public schools, because we looked at the private schools, but it seemed like it might have been that stereotype that people made of Greenwich when you looked at the private schools. But they're great, don't get me wrong. Private schools are fantastic. But for us, we thought a nice eclectic mix of all sorts of kids is how we wanted to educate our kids. If you can't go, and this is Jill's line, I'm going to steal it. If you can't go to public school in Greenwich, Connecticut, where can you go to public school?
That's right. I moved up here for free school. I didn't move up here to pay for school. But I do want to say one thing, Joe, and I got to tell you, because, that snooty attitude about Greenwich, you can find that here if that's what you're looking for. But if you're just looking for regular people, and I'm going to embarrass you and Jill for a second, because when I met you on the sidelines of Cos Cup Crushers, and then you coached my son in flag football for a while, and you had a party at your house. And I went to your house. I was like, oh my God, this is like a huge house. I think this guy's got a huge house. But you guys never acted that way. And even when we went to the house, your Great Danes running around the game room, it's got a really warm feeling. And so it doesn't matter how much you make, whether it's a lot or a little, you're just a good dude to hang out with.
Well, thanks, Gary. That's awful nice of you to say. I do appreciate that. We have to have a shout out to the Burkholts who are here, friends of yours as well. Good news, Burkholts. What do you got? Any good news for our studio audience? You were prepared, told in advance to have good news, Greenwich good news, ready to go. They're freezing up, so we're just going to move on by.
Nathaniel
We're so excited about all the new things.
Sandra's so excited about the new things that are going to be happening.
In Greenwich, the waterfront,
The dining. Yes, we're on a go. Greenwich is a town on the go. So we're all good. Things are good.
I have 2 pieces of good news. Can I do some good news?
Gary, 2 pieces. Go. What do you got, Gary? Give me 2 pieces of good news.
I read in the paper today that Pizza Post is opening again in 2 weeks. You know, there was a fire there. I love local businesses in this town. They're good people. Them and Gopher are going to open. And the other thing is that they just lowered the age today to get a vaccine to 65. So I'm getting warmer. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting warmer.
That's right. Well, they're moving 10-year intervals, so that brings it down to include us as well. We're in the late 50s, so we'll get maybe in the same interval move down. We'll be included. It's coming. We're all going to get it soon, so that's good. Now, Gary, one thing I did promise you as we wind down a little bit here is that if you wanted to promote something in particular, something that's you're very fond of that you want to talk about and have. I know you're used to a very large audience in the millions and millions, but this is our local, maybe 1,000, 1,500 people that might take a look at this just because it's Greenwich. And do you have anything you want to just maybe mention something to our small little audience that might resonate to?
I do. I'm also on the board of a charity here in town, the ECFF, the Emily Catherine Fedorko Foundation. I know you know the Fedorkos. They lost their daughter Emily in a very tragic boating accident. I think it's 6 years ago now. And they started this foundation to, educate people on water safety. And they do a lot of good work. They've distributed life vests. We paid for a video for a major water company to distribute. It's a safety video. We're thinking about revamping it because it's already been 6 or 7 years. But I do have to say, not only do I love working with the charity, but when Emily passed away, the way this community came together is like nothing I've ever seen before. So it's a good charity, and if you ever get a chance to support it, please do. ECFF.com, emsway.com.
Maybe we can, Tim, can you put that on the screen below so maybe the people can freeze their video as they see this in reruns and maybe take a look at it? Tim usually does that for us. Hopefully he has his technology in the Judge compound, upstate New York, and might be able to do this or not. But it was, Gary, it was really, it really, what you do with this town and people like yourself, it's just, as I said to you before, and I'll say it again, it's just why we really enjoy this town, why we dedicate a lot of our time. Jill was on here. She's on the RTM. I'm on the BOE, and we just get involved in lots of stuff. Mary Ellen's also, she says she's on the RTM as well. And Brad, you serve on the Nathaniel Witherall committee. Yep, so we have a whole room full of volunteers. Let's hear it for the room full of volunteers. Let's hear it from our studio audience. That's great. No, it's all good. And Gary, so nice of you to join us. Go ahead, Gary. You can.
I was going to say the one thing I've always thought about is I realize in this town, if you really want to make change, it's on the BET because they control all the money. And my wife said if I even go near it, she's never talking to me again. those meetings go for like 11 hours.
The BET meetings are tough, and I tried to sit in one or two. It's a little tough to make it through, but I know all those folks, and they're great folks. So thank you for them and their service. We've had a few on the program already. We hope to have more because they put so much time. That Mike Mason fella, he's in the background of every one of your meetings, every one of my meetings, every one of his meetings. He's in all those meetings. So those people are great. And we usually conclude with Tim with a bit of words of wisdom, questions. He brings in these real intellectual questions that maybe are above me. So Tim, what do you have that's well above my level with intellectual questions for Gary?
Well, a couple things I picked up on. Gary, you said you wrestled in high school. So did I. What weight class were you?
I'm embarrassed to say. Let's see. Ninth grade, I was 136, and then I think inevitably I moved up to like 148. I was very skinny in high school. Not anymore. I think by the time I graduated high school, I was like 155. But I did referee. I refereed for a year, which was a lot of fun.
Wrestling, yeah, it was great. I went to Blessed Sacrament, a tiny little school in New Rochelle, and I joined the team I was weighing 165 and started working out 6 days a week and wrestled 148. So I was right there.
You can lose weight, but being on the wrestling team will make you lose weight. There's no doubt.
It was crazy. It was crazy. Wrestling's a lot of fun, though. And
I just thought of one more thing I wanted to say about you, Gary, because I've seen you on the microphone at many events, many fundraisers, the Red Cross Ball, you just name it, beach ball. There's all these sort of events that you just put your
Kids in Crisis is a big one for me. Kids in Crisis every year. I host their event. But yes, I get asked to do a lot of events, and I don't mind doing them. Operation Smile is another one because our neighbor runs that, and so I'm a sucker. If you call me, I generally end up saying yes.
I'm not going to use the term sucker. I'm going to say generous with your time, charitable, and you're an upstanding citizen. And I do thank you for spending a little time with us tonight. And hopefully some of the people in Greenwich got to know you a little better than they knew you before. And it's just so nice to have you in our town. So thank you, Gary. Thanks for joining us. And we'll hope to see you around Greenwich in the near future.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody. Have fun in Florida.